Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much. My name is Giovanni, and I am a freshman at Southern New Hampshire University. I am majoring in computer science. So today we're going to be talking about Module 3, and I ran into some trouble with my time management for Module 3. So let's talk about that. If you have not heard about today's sponsor, Anchor, let me be the first to introduce you. Anchor is, in fact, for me, the easiest way for me to make my podcast. It is totally free, okay? And the tools that they have there, if you're not a podcast person, now keep in mind, I am not a podcast guy. I am learning this process just like everybody else that had to learn the podcast. But this allows you to create a podcast very quickly. You just go on and hit the record button. There is no software that you need to download. It is right there on the web. Okay. And Anchor will take care of all of the distribution for you. So all you need to do is edit. They give you the skills for that as well. They give you the tools, not necessarily the skills that you have to learn yourself, but they do give you everything that you need to edit. And then they take care of the distribution for you. You can even make money from Anchor. So every time that a person listens to your podcast, there are, of course, going to be ads that person is going to hear. That's how you make your money. So it is just an excellent opportunity, and it has everything you need to make a podcast. All right, so welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk about what happened this week. So it was interesting. This is week in Module 3. And what we needed to talk about was credibility. So if you listen to last week's podcast, we are working on a paper. It is a persuasive paper. And this week was about evaluating your sources. And so you had to determine the source and the credibility of that source. And so for me, it was a challenge. We'll just say that. It was definitely a challenge. So there is a website that you have to go to in the school that provides you with all of these credible websites. It is just amazing that you get the level of stuff that you need. But I was able to find 3 sources that I needed to provide for my paper. This was for one of the posts. And those things those sources had to then pass what's called the CRAPPO Test, CRAPPO. Okay. And so the CRAPPO test goes through all of these different aspects of just, you have to give a score. So you have to go through, and let's say, for example, it's credibility. So does the resource that you're going to use provide credibility? So in mine, for example, I was using a doctor who wrote a book and, did a podcast and all of these other things. And he wrote this paper, or I should say report. So that was one of my sources, and it had to, in order to pass the CRAPPO test, it has to be 35 or above. So if it's 35 or above, then that is considered a credible source, and that's how you determine if something is credible. And in that, I just, for most of my sources, it was a bit of a challenge, but I did get it done. And my 35, I ended up with 2 sources that were 35, one source that was like a 17. So it just did not make it at all. So what I determined to do. Add it up. So the sources that we needed to use, and for me, annotating the sources, I think, was the most challenging thing this week, is because One thing that I have learned now, 3 weeks into the course, going into finishing up the fourth week next week, is I have learned that if you actually use the rubric for the course, it almost gives you exactly what's needed. I know that should be obvious. That was not very obvious to me going through this week, and that's what I'll kind of talk to you about for Okay, so let me just be real. Here's what happened. So I went through my rubric and I answered every question based off of exactly what she asked. For example, one of the questions that she asked in the rubric specifically was, what was the score that your source received? So I answered it, but I answered it in such detail. When I tell you I got an A on that paper, she specifically stated and gave me feedback, my instructor did, letting me know that, hey, you went through above and beyond what was necessary for this week's answer. You just needed to say, for example, 35. But I said this particular source has a 35 based off of him writing a book, him writing a podcast. This information coincides and supports my particular subject matter. So that was something I was really, really, really extremely happy to find out that I did well in there. And so if you decide, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already considering going and studying computer science at SNHU. So when you start this English class, okay, just understand that just print out the rubric. What I do is I take the rubric and I put it into a Google Doc, and I usually will go through and I will write the whole Google Doc out answering the questions. So I just break them up into questions. So I go through, highlight them, make them into a number system, and then just go through and answer them. All right. Then what I do is I take my paper from that and I actually import it into Apple Pages. And that is because I'm on a Mac. If you're on the PC, you can put it into Word, for example. And then I already have a template that is set up. For doing things like this. So it makes it very, very easy for me to go through, get it done, get the paper. It's already, because you have to do it in 12 point. It has to have I believe it's like a 1-inch margin. And so the paper is already set for that. So you can do that with Google Docs too, if you just want to use something completely online. They do have templates that are specifically built for Google Docs that are already formatted in APA format. So that's something else that will bring, and we'll kind of transition into what I've also learned when it comes to how you present your papers. Well, folks, that is the end of this week's podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me and go along with me in this documenting this journey. I really appreciate it. I will see you for the recap for week 4, which will be coming soon. I will talk to you soon. Bye.